because you are free.
Today, you might be an average citizen, civilian, pedestrian. But tomorrow, you might suddenly become elected to some unexpected office or publish your book and suddenly become famous.
Gee, all those lights?
Or get run over by a truck and get your face in the papers that way. Because you're free and anything might happen. So, happy birthday.
Screens and everything, the New York experience is mind-boggling. I just don't think I'll ever see it in my life again, and I probably won't. Mind-boggling.
I wanted you, and I was looking for you, but I couldn't find you. I wanted you, and I was looking for you all day, but I couldn't find you. You're walking, and you don't always realize it, but you're falling with each step. Each step, you fall forward slightly, over and over. You're walking and then catching yourself from falling. And this is how you can be walking and falling at the same time.
Look, over there is a real dog, and it's really talking.
No one has ever looked at me like this before. No one has ever stared at me for so long like this. No one has ever looked at me like this before. No one has ever stared at me for so long like this.
Well, I paid my money, and I just don't think it's what I paid my money for. I mean, I paid my money, but it's just don't think it's what I paid my money for. You know what I mean? I don't think it's what I paid my money for.
She said the hardest thing she could teach her 3-year-old son was what was alive and what wasn't. The phone rings. She picks it up and says, "It's Grandma. Talk to Grandma." And he thinks, wait, is the phone alive? What about the TV? What about the radio? What in this room is alive and what isn't? Yet, he doesn't know how to ask these questions.
Well, he didn't know how to run his life, so he decided to look at the government and run his life that way. It was a large room full of people, all kinds. And they had arrived at the same building at the same time. And they were all free. And they were all asking themselves the one question: what is behind that curtain? You're born, and so you're free. So happy birthday.
This is the time, and this is the record of time.
Bienvenidos. La primera pregunta es, ¿qué es más macho? Pineapple or knife?
Pineapple es macho que knife.
Sí, correcto. Pineapple es más macho que knife. La segunda pregunta es, ¿qué es más macho? School bus or light bulb?
No!
Lo siento.
School bus es más macho que knife. Gracias.
And we'll be back in a second.
Well, I had a dream, and in this dream, I went to a little town, and in this town, all the girls were named Betty, and they were all singing. Desire. First it's cold as ice, then it's hot as fire. Desire. First it's red, and then it's blue. And every time I see an iceberg, it reminds me of you. ¿Qué es más macho? Iceberg or volcano? Get the blanket from the bedroom. We'll go walking once again. Down in the bayou where our sweet love first began. I'm thinking back to when I was a child, way back to when I was a tot, an embryo, a speck, just the dot, a Hershey bar in my father's back pocket.
Hey, look, over there. It's Frank Sinatra sitting in his chair, and he's blowing perfect smoke rings.
Up into the air, and he's singing, "Smoke makes a staircase for you to descend." So rare. Ah, desire, so random, so rare, and every time I see those smoke rings, I think you are there. Chaos Mouse Macho, staircase or smoke rings. Get the blanket from the bedroom, we'll go walking once again, down in the boondocks, where our sweet love first began. Oh, I'm going to follow you, out into the swamps and into town, under the boardwalk, track you down.
Well, I saw a lot of trees today, and they were completely made of wood. They were all wooden trees, and they were entirely made of wood. I came home today, and you were all on fire. Your hair was on fire, and your shirt was on fire, and the fire was licking all around your feet, and I didn't know what to do. And then 1,000 violins began to play, and I really didn't know what to do. So I decided to go out and walk the dog. Come on, Rover! Come on! Come on! I went to the movies today, and I saw a 30-foot dog entirely made of light. And this dog had long hallway eyes, those long, echoing hallway eyes. I turned on the radio, and I heard a song by Dolly Parton. And she was singing, "Oh, I feel so sad, I feel so bad. I left my mom, and I left my dad. And I just want to go back home now. I just want to go back to my Tennessee mountain home now." Well, you know she's not going to go back home. And even I know she's not going to go back home. And even she knows she's not going to go back there. So I just want to know who's going to go and walk her dog. Come on. Come on. Oh, I feel so bad. I feel so sad. But not as bad as the night I wrote this song. Close your eyes. Okay. Now imagine you're at the most amazing party. Amazing people. Delicious food. Terrific music. Now open them. Oh no! Well, I just want to go and walk the dog.
Lately, I've been doing a lot of concerts in French. Unfortunately, I don't speak French. I memorize it. I mean, I'm talking, but I don't understand the words coming out of my mouth. It's like sitting at the breakfast table and you're eating cereal and you're looking at the box, not necessarily reading the words, just more or less staring at them. But then, all of a sudden, you snap to attention and you realize that what you're eating is also what you're reading, but by then, it's much too late. After doing these concerts in French, I usually had the temporary illusion that I could actually speak French. But as soon as I stepped outside and someone asked for simple directions, I realized I could not speak a single word. As a result of this inadequacy, I found the people I had the most rapport with were the babies. And one thing I noticed about these babies was they were being used as some sort of traffic testers. Their mothers would be pushing them along in their strollers, and then they would come to a busy street with lots of parked cars. So they couldn't really see the traffic or the road, so they just sort of edged the stroller out into the street, craned their head out afterwards, and the most shocking thing about this was the expression on the babies' faces as they sat there in the middle of traffic, and they can't even speak English. Do you know what I mean?
It's exactly like where you are right now. Only much, much better. You know, I don't really believe there's a such thing as TV. You know, they just keep showing you the same pictures over and over again. And when they talk, they're actually just making sounds that more or less sync up with their lips. That's what I think.
Language, it's a virus! Language, it's a virus! Language, it's a virus!
Language is a virus.
So, I met this guy, and he looked like he could be a hat check clerk at an ice rink, which, in fact, he turned out to be. And I said, oh boy, right again. Let x equal x.
You know, it could be you. It's a sky blue sky, and the satellites are out tonight. Let x equal x. You know, I could write a book, and I think this book would be thick enough to stun an ox, because I can see the future, and it's a place about 70 miles east of here. Linger on over when it's lighter. Got the time? Let x equal x.
So I got this postcard, and it said, Dear amigo, dear partner, listen, I just want to say thanks. So, thanks. Thanks for all the presents. Thanks for going all out. Thanks for introducing me to the chief. Thanks for putting on the feedback. Thanks for showing me your Swiss Army knife, and thanks for letting me sign your cast. Hugs and kisses. XXXX0000. Oh yeah. P.S. I feel like I am in a burning building, and I gotta go, 'cause I feel like I am in a burning building, and I gotta go.
You know, recently, a lot of people have been talking about changing the national anthem to America the Beautiful. Now, I don't really know if that's such a great idea. I mean, I really like the national anthem. I mean, it's really hard to sing though, with all those arpeggios, and you're out at the ballpark and the fans are singing away, and it's sort of pathetic, really, watching them all try to hang on to that one same melody. The words are great though, just a lot of questions are during a fire. Things like, hey, do you see anything over there? I don't know, there's a lot of smoke. Say, do you smell something burning? Couldn't say, really, it's pretty early in the morning. I mean, that's the whole song. It's a big improvement, though, over most national anthems, which are in 4/4 time. Things like, we're number one, this is the last place! I also like the B-side of the national anthem, Yankee Doodle. Truly a surrealist masterpiece. Yankee Doodle came to town riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his hat, and called it macaroni. Now, if you can understand the words to this song, you can understand anything that's happening in the art world today.
I wanted you, and I was looking for you, but I couldn't find you. I wanted you, and I was looking for you all day, but I couldn't find you. I couldn't find you. You're walking, but you don't always realize it. You're always falling. With each step you take, you fall forward slightly. Over and over, you're falling, and then catching yourself from falling. And this is exactly how you could be walking and falling at the same time.
Now, the job itself, the job started out with an accident. February 2nd, 2003. The shuttle Columbia came crashing back down to Earth. Parts drilled down into woods, along highways, into swimming pools. 700-pound engine drilled itself down into the earth. The part of wreckage crashed went from California to Florida. Thieves on horseback roamed around wreckage, posing as NASA scientists and picking up parts of twisted metal. And then they started putting the pieces back into these big warehouses in the shape of the shuttle. And there was so much space between each piece. And I thought, when you look at something this big and this broken, where do you begin?
Well, I was lying in bed one morning, trying to think of a good reason to get up, and Jerry called, and she said,
Hey, hi, how are you?
oh, good, you know. Oh, I'm working, but
Well, yeah, me too. Yeah, you know, I'm trying to make some money too. Listen, Laurie, I gotta get back to work.
okay, sounds good. Maybe we could get together next week and go out for lunch.
Oh, yeah, listen, I'll be in touch, okay?
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. And I hang up, and the phone rings again. And it's a man from Cleveland, and he says,
Hey, hi, how are you? Listen, I knew this performance here next week in town, and so I wanted to see if you'd like to do something. You know, you can make a little money, but Yeah, you know, I don't know how I feel about the luncheon. It's kind of dry, but listen, it's just my opinion, so don't take it personally. But anyway, I'll be in town next weekend. We can have lunch and discuss a few things.
And I hang up, and the phone rings again. But I ignore it, and I go outside, and I go to the gallery. And the lady sitting behind the desk comes out and says,
Hey, hi, how are you?
"Good.
Yeah, how's work?
I'm working, but it's..."
Yeah, well, not the 60s, you know. Man, those were the days. There's no money around now, you know. Your eyes sticking out, juice, the jungle out there. Just gotta keep working.
And the phone rings, and she says,
Excuse me. Hey, hi, how are you? How's work? Uh-huh. That was not the 60s, you know. Huh? Oh, yeah, lunch will be great. Yeah, next week? Next week looks fine, yeah, but not this week. I'm very busy now, but next week looks great, yeah. Call you. See ya. Bye-bye. Bye.
and I go over to Magoo's for a bite, and I see Frank and I say, "Hey, hi, how are you?" "Oh, good. You know, how's work?" "Yeah, mine's okay too." "Hey, listen, we should really get together sometime next week. We could go out and have lunch."
Yeah, okay.
"Take care."
Bye-bye.
"Bye now." And I'm at home later that night watching TV, and the phone rings, and it's Frank, and he says,
Hey, listen, I'm doing this show on cable TV, and it's going to be about loneliness. You know, people within the city who, like, don't go to parties or something, and can't have a social life, you know? People who, for whatever psychological, philosophical, sociological reasons, just can't seem to communicate. The gap. The gap. So anyway, it'll be a talk show. People call in. But we will say at the beginning of each show that we don't call in with your personal problems because we don't want to hear them.
And then later that night, I go to one of those extremely awkward parties. You know, the ones where everyone's just sitting around, no one has any idea what to do, so it's all fast.
Hey, hi, how are you? Hey, how's work? Hey, well, listen, sorry I missed your thing last week, but we should really get together sometime. Like, have lunch or something, you know. I'll see you, call you, bye.
And much later, I'm lying in bed, about to fall asleep, and the phone rings, and it's Betty, and she says,
Hey, hi, Laurie. Listen, I know it's late, but I just wanted to call and see how you are. Well, listen, we should really get together sometime. Have lunch. But, listen, Laurie, I gotta go, but if you want to talk before then, I'll leave my answer machine on. Just give me a ring. Anytime.
She pretends she's a movie star. She pretends she's a ballerina.
He pretends he can sing
The lost art of conversation.
the lost art conversation.
She pretends she was in England.
He pretends he's at home.
She pretends she's a renegade.
He pretends he's alone.
The lost art of conversation.
The lost art conversation.
I pretend you love me, and you pretend you care.
I pretend I'm happy, and you pretend you're there.
The lost art of conversation.
The lost art of conversation.
Now, I've always been interested in trying to define what makes up the late 20th century American. For example, and so as an artist, I always thought it was my job to be a spy, to use my eyes and ears and find some of the answers. For example, I like to sit around banks of phones in airports, one of my favorite listening spots, and eavesdrop on conversations. Now, I usually travel on the same schedule as a businessman, and right after lunch, these guys call into the main office, and I just stand there by the phone booth and take notes for my portrait of the American salesman.
Hey, Frank. Listen, Frank, you know, I hate to say this about Brad. We both know he's got a heck of a job. Yeah, you are so right. But we both know he isn't pulling his weight. I mean, and I'm not just saying this because we're both up for the same Safeway account.
Around 1978, I met a comedian, Andy Kaufman. And he was performing his avant-garde Elise act in a club in Queens. The performance started with Andy playing the bongos, and for some unknown reason, sobbing. We became friends, and I acted as Andy's straight man in clubs and field trips. At the Improv in New York, Andy would begin his show by insulting girls and saying,
I don't respect girls when one of them comes up here and wrestles me down.
This was supposed to be my job. I sat in the clubs, drinking Mountain Dews, trying to get up the nerve. In the meantime, I was also supposed to be heckling him. And after a lot of Mountain Dew, I managed to get pretty abusive. Wrestling him down, though, was really hard, because Andy really fought. On our field trips, we would go to Coney Island to try out some of Andy's theories on cutting-edge comedy. We would walk up to one of those test your strength games, the ones with the big sledgehammer and the bell, and Andy would make fun of all the guys swinging away. And I was supposed to beg him for one of those big stuffed bunnies. Oh, Andy, honey, please get me a bunny, please, please. Finally, he stepped up to the thermometer and took a swing. The indicator would rise a few inches, and try again to be clean would flash.
Sir, I deal with children all day, and you're acting like one of them. Oh, I found this. Who's wearing the dinosaur hat? It's my job, sir. See the manager! I hate my life.
We also went on the Roto-Whirl, the ride that plasters everybody against the walls of a spinning cylinder and stretches their bodies into Doppler blobs. Before the ride actually starts, there's a few awkward moments while the attendant checks the motor. And the riders, bound head to foot, stare at each other. This is the moment that Andy seized. He would begin by looking around in a panic, and then he would start to cry.
Help! Help me! I want to get off the strike. I've changed my mind. I want to get up. We're all gonna die.
The other riders would look around self-consciously. Should they help?
Yeah.
He would then begin to sob uncontrollably. loved Andy. He would come over to my house and read from a book he was writing. He would read all night. And I don't know if any of this book ever even got published. I've never been one that hopes that Elvis is still hanging around somewhere hiding, but I will always expect to see Andy reappear someday.
I dreamed there was an island that rose up from the sea, and everyone on the island was someone from TV. And there was a beautiful view, but nobody could see, because everyone on the island was just saying,
Because there was an island that rose up from the sea, and everybody seemed to be somebody from TV. They had a beautiful view, but nobody could see, because everyone there was saying,
paradise is exactly like where you are right now, only much, much better!
Language is a virus. Language is a virus. Language is
It's a virus!
Language is a virus.
Back in 1974, I went to Mexico to visit my brother, who was working as an anthropologist with the Tzotzil Indians, the last surviving Mayan tribe. Now, the Tzotzil speak a lovely bird-like language and are quite tiny physically. I towered over them. I spent most of my time following the women around, since my brother isn't exactly allowed to do this. And every day, we got up at 3 a.m. and began to separate the corn into 3 colors. Then we boiled it, ran to the mill and back, and then finally started to make the tortillas. Now, all the other women's tortillas were 360 degrees, perfectly toasted, and perfectly round. And after a lot of practice, mine were still lopsided and charred. And when they thought I wasn't looking, they threw them to the dogs. We spent the rest of the day down by the river, braiding and unbraiding each other's hair. So there usually wasn't much to report. One day, the woman braided my hair Tzotzil style. I saw my reflection in a puddle, and I looked absolutely ridiculous. But they said, "Before we did this, you were ugly. Now maybe you will find a husband." Now, I lived within a yurt, which is a cob cake structure, and there's a central fireplace ringed by sleeping shelves, sort of like a dry beaver dam. Now, my Tzotzil name was Losha, which loosely translates to mean the ugly one with the jewels. Now, ugly, okay. I was awfully tall by local standards, but what did they mean by the jewels? I didn't find out what this meant until one night, whenever I was carefully putting my contacts on the sleeping shelf, since I lost the case. And then I noticed that everyone was staring at me. And I realized that these were the jewels, the transparent, perfectly round jewels that I put on the sleeping shelf each night and carefully hid in my eyes each morning. So I may have been ugly, but so what? I had the jewels.
when it's totally dark and absolutely silent, and you don't dream, and there's only blackness, and this is the reason. It's because on those nights, you've gone away. On those nights, you're in someone else's dream. You're busy in someone else's dream. Some things are just pictures. They're scenes before your eyes. Don't look now. I'm right behind you.
One beautiful evening in the Garden of Eden, a snake came walking into the twilight. Leaning on his ivory cane, he said, "There's a certain sharpness to a knife or a diamond. Come here, watch it glitter." Oh, it's another blue day in a nowhere place, and we're singing, "Hey, hey, hey." You know, when the Egyptians built their steam trains, they didn't have any fuel to burn. No wood, no trees anywhere. But they did have a lot of old mummy rags lying around. So they gathered up all of the mummy rags and they burned them for fuel. Yes, they burned their ancestors for fuel. Ooh, I'm a crocodile floating down the river. I'm a tree catching my own oranges as they fall from my head. Oh, it's another blue day in a nowhere place, and we're singing, "Hey, hey, hey." And hello to all of those people who sent me on my way.
Have fun. It's your moment now.
It's your turn to walk down the one-way road.
And me, I sent my better self on ahead.
Yes, I did, Timmy! I told you all! I just told you
Your attention, please. It's like at the end of a play and all of the actors come out. And they line up and they look at you. Now, horrible things have happened to them. And so the only question left is, what happens next? And the fire dies out and there were furious winds where he went. Oh, beauty in all of its forms. Funny how hatred can also be a beautiful thing. When it's as sharp as a knife and as hard as a diamond. Perfect.
Hello? This is your mother. Are you there? Are you coming home? Hello? Is anybody home? Well, you don't know me, but I know you. And I've got a message to give to you. Here come the flames, so you better get ready to go. You can come as you are, pay as you go, pay as you go.
And I said, okay, who is this really? And the voice said,
This is the head.
smoking or not smoking?
I'd like to tell you a story. About a story. It's about the time when I discovered that most adults have no idea what they're talking about and have no problem saying whatever comes to mind, whether it's even slightly true or not. Well, it was the middle of the summer when I was 12, and well, I was the kind of kid who was always showing off. I had 7 brothers and sisters, so I was always getting lost in the crowd and would do practically anything for attention. So one day at the public swimming pool, I decided to do a flip off the high dive. You know, the kind of dive where you're temporarily magically suspended in midair, and everyone around the pool looks up and goes, "Wow, that's amazing. That's incredible." Well, I'd never done a flip before, but I figured, how hard can it be? You just somersault, then straighten out before you hit the water. And I did, but I missed the pool. I landed on the concrete edge and broke my back. So I spent the next few months in traction at the children's ward in the hospital. I couldn't move or talk, and I was just sort of floating. I was in the same room as all the kids who'd been burned, and they were in these rotating slings, sort of like rotisseries or spits, that would rotate so that the wounds could be bathed in these liquids. One time, I remember one of the doctors came to me and he told me I'd never be able to walk again. And I remember thinking, this guy is crazy. I mean, is he even a doctor?
Who knows? Of course, I couldn't say this or anything else.
Because I couldn't talk, but I was sure that he had no idea what he was saying. Of course I was going to walk again. I just had to concentrate, make contact with my legs, and convince them, will them, to move. Though, the worst part about this whole experience was the volunteers who came every afternoon to read to me. They would start by leaning over the bed and go, "Hello, Tyler," really enunciating each word as if I'd gone deaf. Then they'd open the book and go, "All right, where were we? Oh yes, the gray rabbit was hopping down the road, and guess where he went? Well, No one knows. The farmer doesn't know. The farmer's wife doesn't know. The farmer's son doesn't know, and so on and so on. No one knew where the stupid rabbit had gone, and just about everyone seemed to care. Now before this, I've been reading books like A Tale of Two Cities and Crime and Punishment, so these gray rabbit stories were kind of slow torture. Well, anyway, I did eventually get back up on my feet, and then for next year, I wore this huge metal brace that was a sort of Frankenstein design. I was basically a freak, and I became very obsessed with John F. Kennedy because he had back problems too, and he became president. Well, anyway, so much later in my life, when someone would ask me what my childhood was like, sometimes I would tell them this story because it was sort of a short way of telling them different things about myself. How I'd learned not to trust certain people and how terrible it is to listen to long, pointless stories like the one about the gray rabbit. But there's always something wrong about telling it. Like something was missing, and it made me very uneasy. Well, one day, I was in the middle of telling it. I was describing the little rotisseries the kids were hanging in, and suddenly, it was like I was back in the hospital, just exactly how it was. I remember the missing part. It was the way the ward sounded at night. It was the sounds of all the children crying and screaming. It was the sounds that children make when they're dying. And suddenly, I remembered the rest. The heavy smell of medicine, the smell of burned skin, how afraid I was. And the way some of the beds would be empty in the morning, and the nurses would never talk about what happened to those children. They just go on cleaning up around the ward and making the empty beds. So the thing about the story is that I'd only told the part about myself. I'd left out the missing part. I'd cleaned it up, just like the nurses had. And that's what I think the creepiest thing about stories is. You get to a point you're making, normally it's about yourself or something you learned. So you get your story, and you hold on to it. And then, every time you tell it, you forget it more. Thank you to Marc-Anthony for directing this, and to Laurie Anderson for writing all of these and giving us permission to use them.